The first time I fired one of Iron Nest's enormous guns, I immediately understood why this game has attracted so much attention. Add to this fact it was arguably the biggest success story of the most recent Steam Next Fest. It finished as the festival's most wishlisted game and the second largest demo by unique players, and I'm definitely seeing why people are getting excited. You spend several minutes interpreting orders, plotting coordinates, calculating a firing solution, and then wrangling this 5,000-ton war machine into position, and then you pull the trigger, and the thunderous reverberation of those guns tears through the entire structure. It's magnificent. But Iron Nest isn't simply relying on the primitive human joy of making an exceptionally large cannon go bang. Beneath all that steel is a compelling simulation game that draws you into its wonderfully nihilistic dieselpunk world. Mechanical processes have a purpose. Every order from high command deserves a little bit of suspicion. Welcome to LT Gaming, my name is Tom, and today we're taking a proper look at Iron Nest. The game launches on the 6th of August, so if anything I've already said tickles your fancy, you're going to want to stay tuned for this video. At its core, this game is a first-person heavy artillery simulator created by a two-person development team. You're playing as the sole operator of Iron Nest, a 5,000-ton walking artillery fortress, armed with two, frankly, quite unreasonable 800mm guns. You're not driving it around like an oversized tank, or directly watching enemies through a gun sight. The entire game takes place inside the machine, with the wider war reaching you through teleprinters, maps, reconnaissance photos, and propaganda-filled newspapers. The setting is alternative dieselpunk version of the 1920s, where Europe's monarchies never collapsed, and the Great War never took place. Instead, Castile has descended into a brutal civil war, and your Iron Nest is the prototype weapon High Command intends to use to crush this. Initially, you're simply following orders and learning how to operate this glorious mechanical monstrosity. But the more reports begin to arrive in from the front, the more questionable those orders become. And that isolation is essential. You're never going to see the whole war. You only see what High Command chooses to print and what's left behind after you pull the trigger. Now, the real magic of Iron Nest is that it doesn't treat firing the gun as a single action, it turns the entire process into the game. Orders arrive through your teleprinter, sometimes precise information, and sometimes you have to piece together a target's location from coordinates, landmarks, and reports from the front. You then scuttle over towards your tactical map and establish where you think the target actually is, measuring distance and calculating the direction of fire. Initially, it's all quite intimidating. Iron Nest is filled with unfamiliar machinery, enormous cogs and wheels, and a bunch of unlabeled switches that makes you suspect High Command's budget wasn't spent on the training and orientation. But for me, learning the process is where a lot of my satisfaction came from. Once I understood how information moves through the machine, it develops this great rhythm. You plot the target, you feed those measurements into the ballistic calculator, select the correct ammunition type, and then try to work out that elevation and powder charges needed to deliver it. Then you physically prepare the gun, engaging the loading system, moving the shell into place, adding the charges, locking the chamber, and then slowly rotating towards where you're firing at. Because these mechanisms take time, you gradually learn to overlap the different tasks, setting the rotation before returning to your calculator, and so on. And for me, the physicality is what stops Iron Nest becoming a game simply about transferring numbers between those machines. It feels like you're doing the process. And when you eventually do pull that trigger, the impact means more because you feel like you earned it in some manner. You didn't click an enemy and watch an attack animation, you interpreted the order, created the firing solution, and operated every stage of the weapon yourself. Iron Nest makes pulling a lever feel like the conclusion to the entire plan, and that's a surprisingly powerful aspect of the game. A quick shout out now that many of you watching the channel aren't currently subscribed. If you're enjoying the video, don't be shy, hit that subscribe button and leave a like on the video and let YouTube know you want more heavy machinery action. What surprised me about this game is how effectively Iron Nest used all this heavy machinery to pull you into its world. It would have been very easy for the dieselpunk setting to become a little bit more than decoration. Plenty of steel, a bit of propaganda, and someone shouting something vaguely authoritarian. Instead, the setting is built directly in how the information reaches you. A teleprinter delivers orders from high command. One carries reports, another requests from soldiers on the front, and the two sources don't always present the same version of events. After each operation, you then have the fallout. Photographs from reconnaissance, newspapers explaining what supposedly happened, but the newspapers are also written by the same regime handing you the targets, so you start to interpret truth as being a bit flexible. And I really like the separation between action and consequence. You never leave the Iron Nest, you rarely witness the wider battlefield directly, and from inside the machine everything is reduced to numbers, coordinates, and firing solutions, and then you have the official reports. And then you start to see some intercepted messages on the aftermath of your attacks, and the human cost begins to creep into view. And it gives this game a wonderfully nihilistic edge. The gameplay question might be whether you can actually hit the target, but then a more interesting one pops into your head whether you should have in the first place. And sound design, I have to shout it out here, it does an enormous amount of work as well. The machinery groans as the turret rotates, shells crash through the loading system, and the shots reverberate throughout the entire structure. Even the quieter moments, making a coffee, reading a report, spending time with your customizable cat, it makes it feel less like a bunch of menus, and more like something where you've been stationed. All of this information culminates in why I think Iron Nest could become a substantial hit. The game has already passed 400,000 wishlists before its extraordinary run through Steam Next Fest, and then it finished as the most wishlisted title. It attracted the second highest number of demo players, and at one point held a 99% positive rating from more than 3,300 Steam reviews. And that's not just the result of clever marketing. People played this fairly demanding artillery simulator, and they wanted more of it. Another fact is the game is launching into 1.0 rather than early access. I think there's a bit of early access fatigue creeping in for many, and with a 20% launch discount, I think it's going to be around $16. And that's phenomenal. All that being said, I do have a few concerns with this game which are addressed now. My main concern with Iron Nest is repetition. As satisfying as all the processes can be, its central loop will always involve getting a target, calculating your solution, preparing the gun, and pulling the trigger. If you don't enjoy that deliberate rhythm, the spectacle of operating enormous artillery will probably not last for very long. And the devs have been very honest about it. The full campaign introduces moving targets, more complicated firing solutions, and missions without aerial reconnaissance and situations where you need to correct your aim from reports with spotters. So there's a bit of improvisation and flexibility in the missions. Now, on the other side of it, for a focused simulation game, maybe that's what you want. And I'd rather see a small team like this explore one distinctive idea properly than 20 shallower systems around it. So, could Iron Nest become one of the year's surprise indie hits? Honestly, I think it's probably halfway there already. The wishlist numbers and Steam Next Fest response have given it enormous attention. But those figures only matter because the game underneath is genuinely distinctive. Iron Nest takes careful calculation, ponderous slow machinery, and an exceptionally large cannon, and wraps it together into a compelling simulation where each shot feels like an achievement. It's not going to be for everyone, but people who enjoy deliberate processes and find that absorbing are going to really connect with this game. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and whether you want to see a full review after the game is launched. Alright guys, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Bye bye now.